And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Let's make sure that we're all working properly. Looks like uh, waiting a little bit on YouTube here. There we go. Now we're live. Let's also make sure we turn off all of the other stuff so we don't get reverb. How are you guys doing? Everyone's doing well. The birds are chiming in. The birds are the birds in our backyard are incredibly happy. I think it's because we have amazing soil, which means we have great worms. So they're all over the place. We have a ton of birds out here. But you didn't come here for the birds. You came here for when are we going to start to see a weekend without rainfall? We're going to talk about that and also go over the overall weather pattern. And guess what? I know, surprising, even though the GFS didn't show, you know, quiet weather for the tropics. And we had hurricanes and all sorts of things popping up, and all sorts of people making all sorts of very interesting and scary posts. Reality set in, and well, there's literally nothing going on in the tropics. So we're going to celebrate that a little bit and take a look at why that's the case and why I and several other meteorologists knew that was going to be the case. So, as always, we will go over everything in terms of the forecast, and then I will take your questions. We'll see how busy we are. Look, it's quiet right now, so I get it. Usually, this time of year, not as many people coming to join, but hey, we'll see where we're at. And meanwhile, we have the Mets on as well. They're up 3-0, kicking butt, taking over the NL East completely with a 5-game lead. So that's always some good news. First of all, book of the week. Now, last week we discussed the book by I guess you call it almost a controversial individual, a professor out of Penn State called Dr. Mann. We looked at his book. I gave some suggestions. Now I want to go the other direction. This is by Judith A. Curry, Dr. Judith A. Curry, Climate Risk Uncertainty, Climate Uncertainty and Risk. Good idea to say it right. Rethinking Our Response. You can find this on Amazon and a couple other bookstores as well. Uh, why did I like this book? Well, for one, it has a lot of background with statistics and also understanding some of the, I guess you could call it some of the errors that are made. And one of the big errors that are made is that the media, or at least some of the media, not all, but some of the media and some of the uh, experiments and reports that are done are based off the worst case scenario. And the problem with the worst case scenario is that it's the assumption that we're all going to go back to coal and coal mining. And look, we're not all China. You know, China does that. I know you might not have heard it, but they do. They are one of the leading coal producers in the world. They also do a lot of solar panels. So they balance coal with solar. So ironically, there you go. Um, but we're not really moving that in terms of the world. We're not moving in that direction. In fact, there's a lot of advancement in nuclear. So when you look at the worst case scenarios, like for example, major cities being underwater, you have to start to go back and take a look. Well, why are they saying that, and why isn't it verifying? And this book does a great job of explaining that and say, hey, look, some of these climate scenarios that are available, more of the moderate ones, those are the ones we definitely should be paying attention to and adjusting for, preparing for, and adjusting our agriculture and stuff like that. In this book we learn a lot about that, and it's backed up by science and statistics and an understanding of how these climate models actually work. So I would definitely, and there's a pretty good discussion here on adaptation and resiliency, which I can never say properly. Um, but I think it's a good book to read. I think you should read both books, okay, and use the knowledge from both books to create a more well rounded view on climate. We'll go over a couple other climate books I found that are really fun to read as well over the next couple of weeks. But this is a book for young adults and also college age, and even just general adults. Okay, college age and general adults, especially with that term. You want to have a well-rounded uh, view on the science and look at both perspectives, so that way that you can get an understanding of exactly what is going on in the atmosphere. So there's that. Now let's dive into some fun stuff. Let's talk about the 52nd conference on broadcast and digital meteorology. I will be there. This is why the last week of June I will not be having a live chat because I will be in Boise, and most likely my internal clock will be completely thrown off. I'm a very sensitive individual when it comes to time. It doesn't matter what time it is where I'm at. If it's 9 p.m. Eastern, most likely I'm going to be falling asleep. So that, geez, that if it's in Boise, that could be like 5, 6 o'clock. I'm going to be like very sleepy. So that's going to be very interesting. But I'm going to be presenting at this seminar, first time, hopefully not the last time, where I'm going to be more involved with the AMS and doing a lot of these meetings. But it's a lot of fun. Check out the registration. You can still register now. If you're not going to go to Boise, here's the good thing, and in some ways we can thank COVID for this. Okay, let's be honest here. I don't think it would have happened without COVID, but you can register and you can actually watch this online. And yes, I put in there for my presentation that to allow it to be shown online. So that might actually be the case where you could watch part of the presentation online. So we'll see. If it is, I will share it. But basically, my presentation is going to be how I did all this, how I built this. And, trying to, I think is a really important topic because, especially with everything going on with natural weather service and people uncertain about their careers, I went from the bottom up. And for me, what is success? Look, I mean, I have a house, an amazing wife, uh, and I get to do this. I don't need a Porsche, so I think they're overrated anyway. But you get my point. And I got all the Godzillas I want. So I don't know, man. I'm living the life. So I'm going to explain how I did it, how I failed, secondary jobs, what I did for that, because I think that's important. It's important not to pretend that, hey, look, I did this and you can too, when it's easy. It's not. It's hard. It's a lot of work. So we're going to go over all that. Yeah, yeah. Well, God, yeah, you know what? I when I was doing the presentation, setting it all up, it hit me really hard. 18 years. It doesn't feel like 18 years. And the other thing that hit me real hard is I had on Godzilla Final Wars, and I love that movie, right? Because it was like one of the newer Godzilla movies. That's 20 years old. And I'm like, well, actually 21 years old. It can drink. And I'm like, how? How did that happen? When I think of old Godzilla movies, I would think like, oh, 20, 30, 40-year-old movies from the 60s and 70s. No, no. 2001. And here we I'm sorry, 2004. Yeah. So I mean it's old in comparison. I mean, it's over a 20-year-old movie. So, wow, time flies, right? So, yeah, we've been doing this for 18 years. Started out as a blog, and here we are. So, it's not overnight success. It's a lot of hard work, but it's worth doing. So, we're going to definitely do that. So, definitely check that out. And if you are a student, definitely, I would suggest doing that. That's one of the things I wish I did more when I was younger was go to more of these AMS meetings, just to build up connections and whatnot in the industry. So let's talk about the tropics. Hey, guess what? Nothing going on in the next 7 days, and we could probably extend it all the way on through the rest of June. Why? Oh, how about dust? Lots of dust. No, no, not the dust that's in your apartment, but the dust from the Sahara Desert that has spread all throughout the Atlantic. And with that, a lot of vertical wind shear as well. That's separate from the dust, but it doesn't help anything. So we have these troughs, we have vertical wind shear, we have a slightly stronger subtropical jet stream. So this is all really bad news if you're trying to look for a tropical low. And why would you? Oh, I don't know. Maybe if you're trying to hype something, for example. But Unfortunately for those individuals, they're going to have to make believe that there's phantom tornadoes or something like that because, unfortunately, or sharknadoes, go for that. Because, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the intertropical convergence zone is quiet. There is nothing going on in the Caribbean, nothing going on in the Gulf of Mexico, America, whatever the hell you want to call it. The Gulf, this body of water here, there's nothing going on. And it doesn't look like there's anything going on going forward. Look at this. This is, again, I explained this last week why I love using the precipitable water value because you could really see tropical development really well. It stands out and is clearly not a cold core system, warm core system. You gotta get an idea of the structure. Well, the one thing I can tell you that we get a really good idea on is that there's nothing going on for the next 15 days, and that takes you all the way through practically the end of June. So, nothing, zero. You got a tropical wave here, not really much development, nothing really going on at all. So this is great news, and it kind of leans on to the idea that we're looking at more of a quiet weather, a quiet tropical season near normal. Once we get into August and September, we'll start to see a nice uptick. I'd keep an eye on anywhere north of the Bahamas in this area here to watch out for some mischief. So we'll keep an eye on that. So why can't we get a dry weekend? It's beautiful right now, right? I mean, it's absolutely wonderful out. We got plenty of sunshine. Temperatures are seasonable in the 80s. But every time we get to the weekend, rain. Okay, so the best way to explain this is look at what is the controlling factors in the atmosphere. We already know that the tropical influence, the tropical forcing mechanisms, are as dead as you could possibly be. The El Nino Southern Oscillation literally is zero for Nino 3.4. The SOI is wavering positive to negative, not really a strong signal. The MJO, it popped into the phase 7, but it's weakening just as quickly, and it wasn't really all that strong to begin with. So, tropical forcing is blah. Stratospheric forcing now, that's a different story. There's some interesting anomalies going on here. Good coffee. Okay, so we have this warm anomaly right here. Why is that important? Well, that's kind of like our traffic cop, right? So this warm anomaly in the stratosphere supports strong upper level lows around the northern Pacific, specifically around the Aleutian Islands and the Gulf of Alaska. And so what's happening here is that this upper level low that's hanging around is shooting these short waves through our neck of the woods. And what happens is that if you get a deep trough here in the summer, you end up with a deep trough or somewhat a sustained trough over eastern Canada. And the timing of these short waves is lining up such that we get these cold fronts and low pressure systems to march right into our neck of the woods just the right time on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So as a result, we keep on seeing this thread, this theme of rainfall. Meanwhile, because of the cold stratospheric nature that is taking shape over much of eastern North America, and really almost all of North America, and also the Atlantic, you get a higher potential for some of these little cutoff lows separated from the polar jet stream, which creates more havoc, right? Because it makes it more difficult to forecast for, and you have the potential for rainfall to linger. So you have these two factors competing. So that takes us to our 500 millibar pattern. So we'll take a look at the operational European, and then we'll look at the ensembles. Taking the GFS out of this because the GFS has gone into the tank. All right, it's just a dumpster fire right now. It's more like a dumpster fire with kerosene on it. It is just a mess. So I'm just removing it completely. So on the European, we get the same theme showing up here. Trough in the Northern Pacific, and a trough over eastern Canada. Same thing on the ensembles guidance here. You constantly get this weakness or trough over the northern Pacific and trough over northeastern Canada and northern Canada. So why is this important? Well, what's happening here is that you're getting a clash is starting to form between the Western Atlantic Ridge, which I told you was going to form, and these cold fronts dropping in. And because of that clash, you start to get waves of low pressure. And those waves of low pressure leads to unsettled conditions. And the timing of these factors are basically using this clash in our temperatures to really enhance these boundaries. So as you can see in the forecast here, we gradually warm up, but notice we got these boundaries hanging just to the north of us, right? And you can see in terms of precipitable water value, man, it is going to be a lot of water in the atmosphere. So you got a gradient at the mid levels down to the lower levels, and you have a lot of tropical moisture to work with. This leads to heavy rainfall. Now, this doesn't mean it's going to be raining all the time, but it means that every time we have lifting, we're going to have these thunderstorms that may not necessarily be severe, but will be strong enough to produce some very heavy downpours and just a kind of a soggy day. You throw in low pressure systems tracking just over or to the south of us, you get that easterly wind. Here comes your maritime air mass. Cool weekends ensue. Why do they keep on happening? Well, let's take a look at these short waves out here in the Pacific, starting out at the 0 hour. That's from this morning. And when they march through, the timing of these short waves interacting with this upper level low and getting ejected out times out perfectly to impact the region right in time for the weekend. So, in order to change this, what we need to have happen is actually more interaction from the Western Pacific. So, what do I mean by that? Well, we need some tropical activity. And I mean like a strong hurricane or typhoon out there to really shift the timing here. It's not so much a change in the pattern, we need a change in the timing of these short waves. And the only way you're going to do that is by setting up a strong tropical system out here to come up and interact with the upper level low and throw off the timing one way or the other. Where you have most of your rainfall setting up, let's say on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, where people don't mind so much, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's not a look to see the pattern changing. It's to have a little bit of an influence, some tropical influence in the Western Pacific to change the timing of these short waves and get us to basically the weather conditions we have now to set up on the weekend, and then the stuff that we're having on the weekend to set up more towards the early and mid part of the week. And all that really comes down to timing. Unfortunately, it's just bad luck this year in the way that the timing is set up with the short waves. So that takes us to our current forecast. What can we expect as we get ready for Father's Day weekend? And happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are out there. Well, right now, high pressure's in control. It's quiet. Southwesterly wind. It's beautiful out there. So, if you're not here, I'm going to be assuming that's because you're out enjoying the beautiful weather. Because, I mean, honestly, I don't blame you. So, absolutely wonderful weather is out there. Not a threat of any showers. The moisture at the mid levels is relatively low. As we take a look at our upper level winds at 250 millibars, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And you can see the setup already showing up for this upcoming weekend. Here is our polar shortwave getting ready to launch in our shortwave out here. Here's the subtropical jet stream. Now, the subtropical jet stream is funny. It is not strong. It's kind of meandering about, okay? It has a lot of little weak short waves in here interacting with the polar jet stream, and they can help to enhance some of these cutoff lows. But aside from the southern plains where you can produce some pretty good severe weather, it's not really having a huge impact on our weather pattern other than to be kind of like an enhancer in terms of the potential for rainfall. The dominant influence here is the polar jet stream and the timing of the shortwaves associated with it. So right now we have plenty of sinking air. It's quiet, not much going on. This feature will start to minor out and interact with the polar jet stream, and that sets up our frontal boundary slowly sinking south for us for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And with that, this feature will interact with that boundary and set up waves of low pressure, but will be nowhere near as strong as what we're seeing here in the plains. So on the infrared satellite picture, you can see all your very impressive lifting, nice convection setting up here. We're again quiet. Here's our next cold front getting ready to impact our region. And unfortunately, with all this beautiful weather, with a western northwesterly wind, you end up with a lot of smoke factors. This is all from Western Canada. Whenever we have that west to northwesterly wind, unfortunately, the air quality, bless you, the air quality in around here is just not going to be all that good, especially if you have asthma or anything of that nature. So unfortunately, that's going to remain a theme. The good news is that over the next 18 hours, while not the best, it won't be excessive. Usually, when I'm watching this, if we're getting to these levels, reds and the I think the purples up here, that's where we start to move into some dangerous conditions. This is where we were last year when we had really bad air quality. When you're down here around 100 to let's say 50, that's where you get impacted by asthma and whatnot. It's going to be an issue. Down here, when you get below 50 and down towards the teens and 20s, you might have some impacts from with asthma. You might have some allergy issues, but other than that, it's not too bad out. It's no different than dealing with pollution, unfortunately, around here. So that's a little touch on the pollution. Now, over the next 90 hours, we are watching our frontal boundary. Now take a look at this: 500 millibars. Notice through the next, we'll go up to 108 hours. I'll go through the whole weekend. And notice here, we don't really see any strong short waves. Nothing is organized. So the first thing that we can do in this scenario is remove any potential for wording like widespread rainfall. Certainly scattered showers, unsettled, but if you have outdoor plans, you definitely want to have some backup plans. I would suggest barbecuing fine, going to the beach not so much. But there is no sign of any like strong storms. When we go take a look at the mid levels here, we have some lifting. We do have some lifting here, but nothing that is impressive. Okay, so it's enough to produce some convection, some thunderstorms, and some rainfall, some scattered showers, should I say, but not anything that stands out to me as like a widespread heavy rainfall event. So, taking a look at the precipitable water values, we have plenty of moisture to work with. So this tells me another factor with all this moisture in the atmosphere, especially when you start getting up to 2-inch precipitable water values, that opens up the potential for some heavier downpours. And Mets just hit our home run. Oh, Nimmo did it. Nice. 4-0 Mets. Okay, so sorry about that. With all this precipitable water in there, that's going to really open up the potential for some heavier downpours. So this is good news in terms of our drought, which we have gone past. We're no longer dealing with that, but we still have issues with our water table. So there is some good news in that respect, okay? And to really rebuild our streams and rivers and get them back to where they need to be. Um, but again, even as we move forward, that theme with the tropical moisture, this tells me here that when we start getting our thunderstorms, we're gonna have to watch out for these themes with this type of precipitable water value factor. Okay, very heavy downpours, frequent vivid lightning, hail, and downburst wind gusts. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of potential for tornadoes. We're gonna have to watch it from a set by set development, but I don't see this as a lot of vertical wind shear potential, but more of the winds are going to be aligned from the southwest for the most part, and you could get some speed shear, but not so much directional vertical wind shear. I think in this setup, we're going to see more of the type of tropical downpour type scenario. In terms of our temperatures, I wanted to point out that look, we're on the warm side of this gradient. Anytime that the cool air tries to win out, it gets driven out. So we're going to get progressively warmer, progressively hotter. I would stay away from any of the long range guidance that starts producing 95s and 100s. I think that is an error and excessive, and is trying to push the temperatures up to 20, 22 degrees Celsius. Obviously, this would produce more 90-degree temperatures, but I'm skeptical of this because we've seen this before a couple of times. I think this is more likely for the southern mid Atlantic, the southeast Tennessee River Valley. I'm not as convinced for the northern mid Atlantic because we're kind of on the gradient, on the edge of the influence of the Western Atlantic Ridge. So I would stay away from the high temperatures pushing above 95 that these 850 millibar temperatures would support. But certainly it's something that we're going to keep in the back of our mind as our 500 millibar heights continue to rise. So let me just jump right to the potential for rainfall here. Again, we have the threat for a few isolated showers tomorrow evening. I think this is going to be really, really isolated, and it's mostly driven by a few of these weak short waves. Your stationary front is just hanging right around Hartford through Newburgh and just north of Mount Pocono, uh, but nothing that's really stands out to me. And then on Friday, again, there's that potential for a few isolated thunderstorms. And then Saturday, you see these scattered showers. Why aren't I expecting a lot of severe weather in this scenario? Well, take a look at what the forecast here with the Cape. And you know what this signal here tells me? Maritime air. So you're getting maritime air getting transported here on, you can even go back to Friday. Nice gradient here. A lot of focus more towards the southern mid Atlantic. Saturday and Sunday, it's really suppressed. So what this tells me is showers. And when you look at the skew T, this is a stable atmospheric environment, moisture loaded, scattered showers capable of heavy downpours. Your PWAT values, precipitable water values, are up to 1.72 inches, so potential for heavy downpours. So, unfortunately, I cannot tell you that the Father's Day weekend is going to be beautiful. It will be anything but. You'll have a lot of variable cloud cover and, unfortunately, a lot of scattered showers. I would not call this a washout. There will be periods where it's completely dry, but certainly not a weekend to head out to the beach in this setup because it is going to be cool. So, that is the overview that I have set up for today. Now I will answer your questions. Now, to be fair, I'm not seeing a lot of questions out there. I'll answer what we have, and we'll see where we're at the end of the questions. Wow, National Center Fielder made an amazing catch. Great job. Okay. Oh, it looks like he trapped it. So there we go, first base. Um, so let's see what we have here. Of course, some great questions as always. We'll start with the premium section and go to social media. See what we got there. What does Saturday look like in the evening, 7 p.m. on? Supposed to go minor league baseball game. Well, by Saturday evening, we're looking at, I can't rule out a shower or two, but overall, we're looking at a variable cloud cover. Most locations are going to remain dry. And if you get impacted by a shower, and this really would be the theme all the way throughout the whole weekend, you're talking about 15 to 30 minutes and then you're done. Okay. And then you got maybe another couple hours until you get another shower. So that's generally going to be the theme for this weekend. So if you're heading out to a ball game, I wouldn't cancel, but I would just be prepared. Also, there is an air quality alert tomorrow. Will there be an issue of wildfire smoke tomorrow and Friday? Yes. As long as we have a west or northwesterly wind, we will have issues with that. If we start getting easterly wind, we'll start to improve significantly, uh, which we will this weekend actually with that easterly wind. China doesn't really use solar panels themselves. They sell them overseas while they continue to use coal themselves, and they are not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. Well, no one really does. I mean, but they are there. There is proven focus of the solar panels in their major cities. Like you're not going to get this in their villages. You know, it's on top of a hut. You know, you're going to have it in your major cities, Shanghai, Wuhan, stuff like that. Where you know, honestly, where do you have the media focused, right? That's where they're going to have it. You know, that's what they're going to show the world. Then they have rest. They have coal. Now they are producing a lot of solar panels, especially for Southeast Asia. Um, Somewhat for the United States as well, North America. But it's kind of a mix. But I do agree with you. It's not all rainbows and solar panel in China either, in solar power. For neutral Enso, the subtropical jet seems pretty healthy for the summer. It is, but it isn't. It has some pretty good short waves, but they tend to minor out pretty quickly, and the polar jet stream has a much stronger influence overall. Um, I expect more vertical wind shear in the tropics this year than what we saw last year. And it's not going to be to El Nino levels, but it will be strong enough to have some disruption like what we're seeing right now. Uh, With the cool ocean waters, do you see sea breeze fronts also being an issue for pop up showers and storms? Not in this pattern, but I do see that when we start to get those stronger ridge influences and we start to get those hot summer days, we'll definitely see more of an influence of the sea breeze front popping off some impressive storms, especially along the Jersey Shore and around Long Island. But in this particular pattern, we won't really see that theme all that much. Let's see here. Audubon says, Steve, you are the master of the no hype weather forecast. Thank you. I try. We'll see. It sets you apart from all the rest. My question to you is what type of weather event gets you amped up? Winter storms. Uh, Susan, how long can I stay up for a winter storm?
We've gone 24 hours.
We've gone 24 hours. Now, I can't say I wouldn't do that for a hurricane, but I mean, I did for Sandy. But then again, we didn't have half power for half the storm either. So I was up more terrified holding my dog, if anything else. Because, yeah, I mean, that was scary. You know, it was like a freight train, you know? But I would definitely say winter storms get me amped. Um, but I probably would be just as excited for a tropical system. But when I say excited, I mean I would be ready to you know put out the forecast and get things focused, and you know my adrenaline would be going. But I also would not mind us never experiencing that. I am perfectly fine with us never having a hurricane again. I know that's not going to happen, but I'm just saying I'm not looking forward to it. I know there's some people are looking forward to it. No, especially when you have a house. I mean, I like to keep it standing. It's wonderful. I don't need a hurricane to knock it down. Um, let's see here. Yeah, that's not fun. What weather do you get excited about when you see the data coming together and support? Yeah, definitely winter storms. Although, you know, I used to be all excited about like 25, 30-inch snowfalls, but now I got a roof I got to worry about. So maybe not that much, you know? Remember back in the day when the malls used to produce 30-inch snowfall totals and that's what you actually got? Yeah, now I'm a little bit more wary of the roof. Like, I don't know whether I want that much snow on top of the roof. So it's always something to, as well. Shoveling it is no fun either. I remember the 24 hours you did in, if I recall correctly, winter 2021 22 for the big storm that we had. Yeah, that was a lot of coffee. By the time I was done with it, I had lost my voice and I had lost my sanity. Um, I was just rambling for, at the end of that, I was literally rambling. I'm like, it's still snowing. It won't stop. Like, I was like, I really didn't have a lot more to add other than like, it's almost at the end. No, another band reformed. It's never ending. This snow's never going to end. Of course, now we can barely get a snowflake over the past couple of winters. So maybe I jinxed it. I don't know. Let's see what's going on social media. Um, can you explain why weather models perform better or worse over time? It depends on the weather model. First of all, there's a lot of factors you have to consider. First of all, what type of weather model is it? Not all weather models are the same. So, for example, are we dealing with a mesoscale model, synoptic model, or climate model, right? And when I say climate model, I'm not talking about climate change, all that stuff. I'm talking about like the CFS, for example, that does seasonal forecasting, right? The reason why that's important is that you have to understand your resolution. Okay, think of resolution like a smart TV, right? You have your regular LCD TV with the 720, right? Let's say that's kind of like your climate model, right? Then you have this synoptic model, and that's your HD TV. That's your 240 or 120 hertz with a higher resolution, and it has enhanced colors for it. And then your mesoscale guidance, that's your NAM and your HRR, that is your 4K TV, right? Now, when you use these different models, you have to understand what their limitations are and their improvements, and you have to use the right tool for the job. So, for example, I would never use the CFS to forecast for a storm because it's unreliable and the resolution scale is too big, right? I would use the GFS. Well, I wouldn't use the GFS, but you could use the GFS, the European, the Canadian. You want to use that synoptic models. However, I wouldn't want to use synoptic models to forecast for a thunderstorm because the grid is too big, right? It doesn't handle the latent heat release very well. So then you want to go back and you want to look at the NAM and the HRR. But at the same time, you have to know your time range. So you want to use the NAM when you're 24 to 48 hours out, and you want to use the HRR guidance when you're under 18 hours out. So that way you can maximize the benefits of those models. So again, there's that factor. Then layer that on top of that, you don't always make a forecast just based on a model. So, for example, let's say I'm dealing with winter storms, right? So, I use all the synoptic questions. I use the European for all the synoptic questions: the formation of the upper level load, the timing of the low pressure system, the moisture transport, the type of polar air mass that might be in place, how fast is it going to erode, all that stuff. Then once I answer those questions, I turn around and then use the NAM and layer over that, not necessarily using the radar aspect to it, but looking at the dynamics involved in that model and what is the potential within the precipitation shield to produce snow banding, which is a mesoscale factor, a convective factor, right? It is part of within the storm. So you use that and layer over all that other data. Again, you do not copy and paste. You take the data that's coming from that, layer over the synoptic data, and you combine that to produce your forecast. So that's generally how you use the models. So when you just try to look at a model and just say, "Oh, well, because of this, it does that," um, that's going to be a mistake because you have to use the models for the right scenario, right time frame, and resolution potential. And when you do that, and you can start to map out what those factors are, then you can start to make a better forecast. Once this pattern, honestly, I expect this pattern to be throughout the whole summer. Um, the timing of it, as far as whether it's getting rain every weekend, uh, I think that has the potential to change, as I said. But this is basically the summer weather pattern that we have. We have um, humid conditions definitely on the way. I think definitely see we a lot. We'll see periods of 80s and 90s, and then go back into the 70s, and the next day back into the 80s again. But I think the overall theme this summer, and the reason why we'll have above normal temperatures on average for this summer, is because the high humidity and our warm low temperatures. Keep an eye on that as we move forward throughout the summer. Let's see here. Will we start to see more severe? Honestly, when it comes to severe thunderstorms, I think if anything that we'll see is Severe thunderstorms in the form of downburst wind gusts, because again, going back to all the moisture in the atmosphere, and you have dry air aloft and these troughs to the north of us. Um, I think you'll get a lot of storms where you're lifting a lot of deep tropical moisture into the atmosphere, and then because of that, you'll see a lot of downburst wind gusts and very heavy rainfall. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of those as we move on through the summer. Let's see here. Any other questions on social media?
Nope.
Right. Well, let me just double check to see if we have anything else on YouTube. If not, we might just call it an early night tonight, which I understand. Look, as I see it, beautiful nights like tonight when the weather just isn't all that active, even with Father's Day being, a little unsettled. It's not like it's a major storm. I do expect less activity, like less people visiting, watching. Look, I mean, hell, I'd be outside. I understand it. But that also means that when we get to the winter, we got major winter storms. I usually go over, right? So it always balances out. So if we don't have any more questions, and it doesn't look like we do, then I think we'll just call it an early night tonight. Okay. So just to wrap things up, again, our book of the week, just so we zoom in, Climate Uncertainty and Risk, Rethinking Our Response by Judith A. Curry. Definitely check that out. Get this along with Dr. Mann's book that we did last week, and I think you'll have the start of a well-rounded education on the ideas of climate change and how to approach it. The Father's Day weekend is not a washout, but certainly unsettled and not anywhere near what I would call a beach weekend. That is for sure. Oh, we have a question. We have a question. Oh, okay. So Jeff is asking, so moving out Friday morning, so we are good until 1, 2 p.m. or a chance of showers. When you're leaving, I know where you're going. So when you're leaving, you should be fine. As you're traveling west, you will run into those showers as you go on through. But starting out, you'll be fine. As you head west, though, that's where you're going to be dealing with some showers. So definitely, we have fireflies. Uh, Let's see here. Another question came in. Do you expect flash flooding risks to increase this summer? Yes, especially with the high. Every time that we push our precipitable water values over 2 inches, flash flooding will be a major threat, especially urban flooding. Right now is a good time for you to check all of your drainage, all of the if you have any blocked drains on the roadways and by you, I would definitely make sure that's checked because you don't want to deal with that when it starts to actually rain and you're in the middle of those events. Um, but overall, I do expect there to be a definitely a flash flooding potential this summer. Uh, who is the best TV meteorologist and why? Oh man, I'm not answering that. That's not fair. That's not. First of all, I know most of them already. So I mean, come on. I'm going to get emails like, "Hey, what are you saying?" I think all of them are outstanding. They all do an outstanding job. I really, really do. And they all have their amazing strengths. They're all amazing people, and that's all I'm going to say because I don't need there to be an issue with anybody. And honestly, there really isn't, really wouldn't be anyway. So they do an amazing job. And that's that. Well, that will definitely wrap it up because I'm not getting into a fight with any other meteorologist. And that is not what I do because it's just not worth it. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Father's Day weekend and enjoy it. Enjoy all the barbecue and all that stuff. I want to say Happy Father's Day to my dad, who has something on the way. Should be there tomorrow. I hope you enjoy it because it's going to be great. And in the meantime, stay safe out there.